Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, students. Today we are going to start up with a new chapter, that is the moon.
Hello, children, and in today's session, we're going to be visiting our nearest neighbor, the moon. So, let's look at the moon. Now, when we see the moon is a ball of rock that is nearly quarter the size of the earth, and it is at a distance of 3,84,400 kilometers away from the earth. So, which makes moon our nearest neighbor in space. Now, although the moon is a bright object in the night sky, it does not have any light of its own. Do you know that? It doesn't have any light of its own, and in fact, whatever light of the moon that you see is nothing but the reflection of the sun's light. So, sun's light falls on the moon, and the moon simply reflects that light onto the earth. So, this is how it works. Now let's see how are the conditions on the moon. Now we all know that there is no life on the moon and it has no water, and the surface is pretty much covered with a layer of dust. Not just that, it has mountains and huge round pits on its surface which are called as craters. So this right here is a crater. You can see that there are so many craters on its surface, and the interesting thing is, from the earth's surface, if we use a telescope, we can see these craters that are present on the moon. Now the moon has no atmosphere surrounding itself like the earth does. So because it has no atmosphere, it also has no wind, it has no clouds, and it has no rain at all. And you must all know, children, that the function of the atmosphere on earth is that during the day it absorbs the heat and makes sure that the earth doesn't become very hot, and during the night it retains heat to make sure that the earth doesn't freeze. But since the moon does not have an atmosphere at all, it becomes boiling hot during the day and it gets freezing cold during the night. You can see atmosphere plays such an important role in our lives. Now, a few more interesting facts about the moon is that no voices can be heard on the moon because there is no air. Even if you stand on the moon and shout, nobody will be able to hear you because sound travels through air, and since there is no air on the moon, there is no voice that can be heard. And you also know that earth has its own force which is called as the gravitational force, and because of this gravitational force, it pulls everything towards itself. No matter what you throw up, it lands down because of earth's gravity. So in the same way, our moon also has its own gravity. But as we saw, moon is so much more smaller than the earth, so even its gravitational force is a lot lesser. To be specific, it's just 1/6 the force of gravity on earth, which means that if you jump 1 meter high on earth, you can jump 6 meters high on moon with the same effort that you put to jump for 1 meter on earth. Not just that, even your weight differs from earth to moon. Your weight on moon is just 1/6 your weight on earth. So go ahead and try to calculate your weight, whatever your weight is. Suppose you are 23 kilos, you put 23 divided by 6, whatever answer you get, that is your weight on moon. Isn't that so interesting? Now we'll see how exactly the moon moves. Now the moon revolves around the earth in the same way that our earth revolves around the sun. And this moon takes 28 days to complete one revolution. So whatever revolution that you're seeing in this picture here actually takes 28 days to complete. And moon is the only natural satellite that earth has. So what is a natural satellite? Satellites are generally objects that go around stars or planets. And natural satellites of planets, we call them as moon, and earth has only one natural satellite, which is the moon. Now, I'm sure day in and day out, when you look at the night sky, you will see different phases of the moon. You will see sometimes the moon is not visible, sometimes it's a crescent, sometimes it's half, and things like that. So, right now, let us talk a little more about the phases of the moon. The moon, as seen from the earth, seems to be changing shapes every other day. Now, this is because we only see one part of the moon. This part of the moon reflects the light of the sun towards us. So, in this part, if you say this part of the moon is reflecting sun's light, whereas here, this part of the moon is reflecting the sun's light. So, whichever part of the moon is reflecting the sun's light, that is what we get to see. The rest of the moon is always dark and we cannot see it. Like you can see, the rest of this moon here is dark. So is here. So any part of the moon that you don't see, which is dark, does not reflect light from the sun. Now, these different shapes that we see of the moon is what we call as phases of the moon. So let's look at them in detail now. Now, these phases are 5 different phases. We have the new moon, which starts on day 1, where you see no moon at all. On a new moon day, the side of the moon that faces us gets no sunlight at all. So that's why we call it as a new moon. It is on day 1. So you can see this here. This is actually the new moon day, when the part of the moon that faces the earth does not absorb any sunlight, so we see a dark moon like this. So this is on day 1. Then we move on to what is called as the crescent moon. As the moon moves along its orbit, now in this case it's moving in this direction. Now as it's moving along its orbit, a small portion of the moon faces the earth. So that gets sunlight. So you can see that we see a crescent moon. So this is seen on day 4. After the crescent moon, we have the half moon that we see. Now, half moon happens in a week's time from day 1, and you see half the moon. So this happens on day 7. So you can see from the crescent moon, we're moving towards the half moon, because half the moon gets the sun's light and we're able to see it. Then from then we move on to what is called as the gibbous moon. Now this gibbous moon happens 3 days after the half moon, and we get to see 3/4 of the moon's surface. So that is here. So you can see gibbous moon on day 10, and it is soon after the half moon. And finally we end up with a full moon day 2 weeks after day 1, when the entire side facing the earth gets sunlight, so we get to see the entire moon. This happens on day 14 of the cycle. So from the gibbous moon we move to the full moon. Now this is half of the cycle. Now the second half of the cycle, which is the next 14 days, happens in the reverse order. That is, from full moon it moves to the gibbous moon, and from the gibbous moon it goes to the half moon. From the half moon it goes to the crescent moon, and from crescent moon we're back to where we started with new moon. So this takes another 14 days. So you know that one revolution takes 28 days. So one half takes 14 days, the other half takes another 14 days, which brings us to a total of 28 days. So this is about the phases of the moon.
Jazakallahu khaira.